What is up, listeners and now viewers of the Sell Anywhere podcast? I am your host, Donnie Tuttle, author of the new book, Sell Anywhere. I am with someone that I met online. This is like, man, this is 2021 right here. When you're meeting people online, and listen, this isn't dating, but there is a little bit of a romance going here. Jesse B. Good. You need to look him up. You need to connect with him because the stuff I was seeing from him, it just resonated. Jesse is an expert at helping people to experience a journey, to go where you're trying to take them. And if you're selling something or you're trying to lead people, isn't that what we want? We want to help them to experience, right? We want to get them to a place. So, Jesse, welcome to the podcast, my friend. I'm so glad to be connecting with you here.
Hello, Donnie, my man. How are you? Good to see you. Good to be with you again. I love that you brought up that we met online because people of our age remember when that was a weird thing to say. That you met online. It was
we
kind of
met
like,
online, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Not a big deal anymore. People are like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I don't even know. Usually they'll say, oh, we met on Tinder or met on whatever thing. But yeah, online. I think we're starting to date ourselves.
I love it. So before we get into to what you do, I want to hear, man. What do you love? Like, what are you doing that you're in love with, Jesse?
What do I do that I'm in love with? I got to cover number one. I'm a family guy more than anything. Love my wife, love my kids. I'm a fellow dad of 8, like my man Donnie there. So they keep things very exciting. But you know what? I love making people happy. I wrote a book a couple of years back called Happy to Help, Lessons Learned Serving 1 Million Customers. And that's generally my attitude about stuff is whatever I can do to help make people happy, I will do that. My wife says it's a blessing and a curse because I am somewhat of a people pleaser and still learning that sometimes you can't please everybody.
Wow. Okay. I'm in love with this. So this is also the Sell Anywhere podcast. So before we even get too deep into the woods here, even though I'm so tempted,
for sure.
We'll go there in a second. Where are you at, brother? Like I see this wonderful artwork behind you. Are you like doing storyboards at Disney, Pixar? What are you doing, man? What's going on? Where are you at?
Yeah, this is just some graphic drawing, looking at some customer personas, looking at customer journey as well, like you mentioned, understanding specifically who is it that we want to sell to and what should that journey look like. I think that if you are one of those people on LinkedIn that connects with someone and then immediately sends a pitch in your next message, you need to rethink that. I haven't talked to anybody that likes that. And you need to think about the experience that your customer is having. What kind of experience do you want them to have with you? What do you want them to think about you? How should they feel? Go back and try that again. Rework what you're doing and let's see what happens. I would love to hear, I would challenge anyone, if anybody listens to this podcast and they're having success with, hey, I see that we went to the same school, reach out, and let's connect. And then I connect. And then the very next thing is, hey, here's my pitch for my business. If you're listening to this podcast and you do that, then reach out to me because I want to hear how that works because I don't like it. And I haven't talked to anybody that likes it. And so I would love to hear from somebody who's selling anywhere that works for them.
I would think that anyone who reaches out to me, they get responses, probably not what they want.
Sure.
But I had a guy actually last week. He sent me one. He says, this is funny. He said something about like, oh, I really am I'm excited about what you're posting. Love your profile, and kind of blah 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 blah. But if you go up to the very beginning, he says, "Dear Roland." So I'm imagining there probably have to be like 1,000 people who got like a deer Roland
Yeah,
put into their thing, and probably pay someone in Pakistan to do it for him, right? He didn't do it himself. So my response was like, who are you? And how did you know my wife's pet name from me? Only my wife can call me this.
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me more. Are you with the KGB? So anyway, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I love it. I've
that's
been searching for the witty response back to those immediate pitches, and I haven't found it yet. So I think we're on the right track.
all right. Well, I have an assignment for you and for anyone who is yeah, like I don't know, you have a few minutes to blow and you want to laugh. It's about a 12-minute TED talk. The guy who responds to those mass emails.
Yeah, yeah. It's James Veach, I think.
Yep, it's
Is the
him.
name?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just strings them along with the phishing emails that they're trying to do with, hey, I've got a plan. Give me your account number, and he'll say, oh, but we have to speak in code. Here's our new code words. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's I'm with you all the way.
it
Great
was
great
amazing.
stuff right there.
It was amazing. Talk to us about client journey. Actually, I think that's where you and I first kind of sparked, as I was
It
sharing, hey,
is.
here's
It
my
is.
client journey map,
Yes.
and I was sharing it. What talk to me about what is this and why should we map it out? Why should we care? Man, we lead people, we sell to people. Why should we care about this?
Yeah, I think more and more today we need to be very deliberate about the experiences that we are developing and creating, providing, delivering to our customers. Let me go back a few years. I was probably 21 or 22 at the time. Was just starting college, got started a little late. Had an opportunity to live in Brazil for a couple of years, and then was starting college, and interviewed to work at a video store. So here I am. Well, I'm dating myself again because talking about
Video
the video
stores,
store.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And what I remember from that interview was that the manager who was interviewing me said, "Oh, customer service is so important here. Do you think customer service is important?" And I said, uh, "Yes." He's like, "Oh, we do whatever we have to do to deliver great service. Will you do whatever needs to be done?" Yes. Okay, well, because we think that that's the number one most important thing, and do you think that's the number one thing? Yes, yes, definitely is. And he said, "Great. I think you're a great fit for the job. Let's hire you. We'll bring you in." I was like, "Okay, cool." Uh, but then what's interesting is after all of this focus on customer service, the first thing I learned how to do was to collect movies from the Dropbox. But after that, then I learned how to check those movies in. And then I learned how to reshelve the movies and so on and so forth. You get the point that, and this is the challenge I see in most organizations, is that they aren't being deliberate about the experiences that they want to deliver to those customers. They say, hey, we want customers to have a great experience. You seem like a really nice person. You've got a great personality. You'll do just fine. And they hire people. There's no sense of training. There's no sense of here's the journey we want people to have. And I think if you can define those things, who you're selling to, what you're selling, what that whole process looks like. And then when you bring in people, you're not just bringing in the right people, but educating them in that process. Then you can create consistent journeys for all of your customers.
Okay. All right. So in the reason this matters, by the way, if I don't care where you're at in the spectrum, right? You may be someone that maybe you're the king of your little corner, right? I just talked to a king of their corner, and you know what happens when you're not provided, and when you're not focused on the experience that's happening. Someone who's young and hungry,
Mm-hmm.
they will.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's too easy. It's too easy to lose connection with people because there's so many options, so many choices. The internet, right, gives us so much availability of what's out there. Can you like what have you seen, Jesse, in terms of I guess the difference of a company that maybe has an identified client experience, and we'll talk about employees too, because there's like, we have internal clients too, but
Sure.
an identified client experience, so someone who's purchased your product or service versus a company that does not have an identified client experience.
Yeah, I think the biggest way that you can tell the difference between those two is the level of consistency. Do I go and get the same experience every single time? Now I have to put a little asterisk on there because, yeah, I can go to Taco Bell and I'll get the same experience every single time. But Taco Bell is not what people are talking about when, hey, where do you want to go to eat, whatever, because they don't eat cheap, low quality food like I do. You need to remember that just doing the bare minimum, just doing what's expected of you, that's not going to cut it. It might bring in people. Jay Baer, who is someone that I follow within customer experience, he has this great quote. He says, competency does not create conversation.
Come on.
And so if people are coming to you and you're just giving them exactly what they expect, that's fine. They will leave satisfied, but they're not speaking about you to other organizations, whether you're in B2B or other customers in B2C. They're not referring you, offering recommendations for people to come to your business. So it's not just consistency, but also taking things to the next level. I always talk about, you want to exceed expectations, but the challenge is finding kind of that middle ground of where you can exceed expectations, but also do it consistently. You've probably heard the phrase people talk about, surprise and delight. Surprise and delight is great, but I prefer, let me start over. The organizations I work with, I encourage them not to utilize surprise and delight unless it's something that they could potentially do with every single customer every single time. Because sometimes you offer some of those experiences, you surprise and delight your customer. They say, hey, I had this really cool thing happen. They tell a friend about it, or an industry colleague, and they come to do business with you, but then they don't receive that same surprise and delight. Then you may still be doing a great job, but you're losing that level of consistency. So it's consistency plus exceeding the expectations.
Interesting. So you may be describing me right here, Jesse. Be good. By the way, there's a phrase that that I coined, and I utilize it in sales a lot, and I think it works for leadership too. And it's this: if you do what's expected, people will trust you. But if you do the unexpected, they will love you.
I like it.
And what I see, and really what my whole goal is in all the things I'm doing with sales and leadership, is to help people to move past the quid pro quo, you give me this, I'll give you that type of interaction. That's just still a part of it. Obviously, there's an exchange, right, of value.
Yeah.
But if I can exceed that, if I can create a spark, if I can interrupt your pattern of what's expected, if I can go beyond, I can do something special. I learned in sales and selling when I would reach the gatekeeper, and if you said the same thing everyone else said, there was this expected dance. Hey, how are you? I'm doing good. How are you? Great. Hey, can I speak to Bob? Well, Bob's busy right now. I'll put you through to his voicemail. That was something that was like, boop, 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 boop. But if it's like, hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Well, if I was any better, vitamins would have to take me. And you break their pattern, and suddenly, like, they're a human.
Yeah.
In what we're talking about, or at least like the way I see a part of this is a way to actually show up and be a human in the midst of what we're doing. There's a place I still remember it in Gainesville, Florida, Heavenly Ham. If I go back there, I haven't been back there in 2 years, but I will make I'll go back there every other, like when we, I don't know, I guess it's like with Senate or something, like when we reelect new senators or whatever. It's like I'm there, and this lady whose name I can't remember, every time I go in there, she goes, "And what would you like in your salad, Mr. Donnie?" And I'm like, how do you do this? I've asked her how, like, she remembered after one time of meeting me and getting my name. And it's like, that's world famous. I don't know how you replicate that, but she sure as heck gave me a feeling that was like, that's world famous. what does it do, Jesse? Like I want to get into the process and creating something that's repeatable, but as a client, as someone who is paying money for something, what do you think is happening psychologically when we're causing someone to feel something beyond just what was tendered?
Yeah, I think what happens is our brains are designed to find the quickest and easiest ways to do things. We're always creating shortcuts in our brains, and that's why we get into habits, because it's easiest just to do things the way that we have always done them consistently. And it takes our brain extra work and effort when we decide to change a habit or do something different. And I think it's just much like you said before, where when you make those calls, if it's the same thing over and over and over again, people are just, it's just send it through the loop, send it through the loop, nothing different. But when you do something that's different from everybody else, something that really differentiates yourself, then you're breaking those shortcuts, those connections, and people have to pause. They have to think about it. Wait a minute, what's going on here? What's happening? And you start to create new connections. You talked about psychological. I think emotional connections, that's just as important, because what's the old saying? People do business with people they know and like. And I've heard more and more people say, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And trust is an emotion. It's something we feel between people. So if we can start to create emotional connections with people, and like I said, as we talk about the journey, much of that is an emotional journey. It's not just what's going to happen to the customer, but what do I want them to feel throughout this journey? And I've found immense success with that.
Let's see.
Consider that all of your customers, they have a need, and you can identify what that need is and connect with them on an emotional basis. A good friend of mine who works in IT had the opportunity to deliver a presentation to a group of other professionals, and they were delivering a presentation on what happens when your system gets hacked, where you're working, when your network gets hacked. And they had given it some title, the 3 steps to take when your network gets hacked. And somebody in the group, there was 2 or 3 of them that were going to be presenting, said that's not very appealing as a presentation. It sounds kind of generic. And someone else said, well, what do people actually say when they get hacked? Okay, so kids put on the earmuffs now. The response was, people say, oh shit, we got hacked. And so that's what they titled their presentation, and it was standing room only.
Wow.
Yeah, because they tied into people's connection. They connected with people's emotions. What am I feeling? What am I going through in that moment? Where's this need recognized? Now, that's not always going to be the response that you want to get. There's always opportunities to create emotions. Let's look at more of like a B2C scenario. A buddy and I, a couple years back, went to a restaurant. It was just the local Applebee's. Applebee's is fine. It's not, the highest quality restaurant. But we met this incredible server whose name was Reno. And we came in, we ordered our drinks. He was just a fantastic server. He was very nice, very polite, just kind of made some cool connections with us. He did this thing where some servers don't stop and talk to you at all, and some will stop and talk, and then it's kind of like, okay, like we're move along
Right.
now. Reno knew exactly how long to be there, when to come, when to go, and we had a great time. We left another week later, same buddy and I, hey, let's get together for lunch. What do you want to do? Hey, let's go back to Applebee's and see if Reno's working. So we walked in, we're greeted. Yeah, we want to sit in Reno's section. And we sit down. Now, usually your server will approach and say, hey, what would you like to drink? Da, 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 da. But not Reno. He walked up with the exact same drinks that we had ordered the week prior for my friend and I. We ordered different drinks too. So he remembered us, just kind of like you talked about with the place that you go in Gainesville, and made an immediate connection right there. And that appealed to us emotionally, that we were just, backs of our heads blew off. This is incredible. This guy remembers us from coming in one time and remembers what we came in to drink.
So like what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling here as you're going through this is like, even in the face of maybe even superior options for food, you probably at some time have chosen to go back because of Reno.
Yeah, for sure. And knowing that, I can go to some swanky restaurant, and I've been to, there's nice places around here, and there's also nice servers. But people that do things like that, there was other things that he did throughout. Obviously, for us to even go back initially, there was things that he did that stood out as a server. The irony is that, and this is important, I think, for organizations to learn. This is something I'm picking up on more and more lately. Is our connection, our emotional connection, is with people, not with organizations. Which means if Reno went to work at Chili's across the street, I would have been going, I would quit going to Applebee's and start going to Chili's, because that's where Reno's working. It's not about the food that I'm getting. It's about my emotional connection that I have with that person, with an employee or a seller in that case.
Okay. So, and by the way, leaders, you've heard this said before. People don't leave companies, right? They leave
Leaders,
leaders.
right? Yeah.
And the same is the case here. In like, we're talking about the power of small. We're talking about the power of of being like actually slowing down from the mechanism of what you're in and actually being a human being. This is good news, isn't it, Jesse? Like the fact that like this is now important and valid, and this is good, I think.
Yeah. And here's something that's interesting. On one of those trips, because we started going back to Applebee's, all the time to sit in Reno's section, and we got there one day and asked to sit in his section, and we were seated, and we noticed it was kind of an early lunch that we went for. There were only, I don't know, 3 or 4 groups of people in the restaurant, but we were all sitting next to each other. We thought that was kind of weird. And we could see one of the other servers complaining to the manager. And by this time, we had kind of gotten to know the manager a little bit, and we stopped him and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "She's complaining because everybody that's come in today has requested to sit in Reno's section. And so she wasn't getting any people at her tables." But here's what's vital is that I don't think that there's anything that Reno did that other people couldn't do. Right? So we talked about consistency and consistently exceeding expectations. The things that he did for us in a regular visit, even remembering us and bringing us those drinks, those are things that any other employee could do. And it boggles my mind how they could see him do that and see people requesting to sit in his section and not start doing that as well. I don't know why some people don't pick that up. But he was very in the zone and into what he did, because it was one of the first times that I saw somebody take an order without writing it down. I feel like this is more common now, but we talked to him about it, and he could do up to 6 orders from memory. He could remember 6 orders, and he told us, I'm working on getting up to 8. And so it wasn't just like willy-nilly. He didn't just show up and bring people their food. He understood his craft. He understood what he wanted his customers to go through, what that experience should be like and what they should feel. And he looked at, here's where they are now. This is my baseline. How can I make that better?
So if I were to clarify or to maybe add a little bit of spice to that, it's knowing what to do, right? That's the baseline.
Yeah.
And that's where most wage earners stop, versus showing up as yourself and saying, how would I do it? How can I be an artist in this scenario? How can I be a professional in this scenario? And the crazy thing is, and I'm sure that any of the leaders listening to this is like, you find a Reno, you find someone who does that, and maybe he's really good. Maybe he was just made to be a server, but usually it's not the case. It's just what he is he's a habitual professional.
Hmm.
And if you were to take that person and put them into, you name the business scenario, right? They're generally going to succeed. All you have to do is just you give them the path of what that, of what the improvement looks like.
No,
That's
and that's
outstanding.
100% true. As crazy as it sounds, Reno and I are friends on Facebook. How many of your servers are you friends with on Facebook? I don't
Right.
know, but he has since moved on. He's not a server anymore. He went and he got married, and he and his wife started their own business, and they're immensely successful, which is no surprise to me, right? Because I feel like with someone like him, and it's not exclusive to him, any of us could do this. It's just the way that he thinks about how can I improve this process and make it successful. But you could put any business in front of him and he would take it and run with it and make it amazing.
All right. I'm going to put a scenario out in front of you,
Oh, goody.
and you're going to walk us through it.
Okay.
You're going to fix this scenario. Okay. We're going to go into an organization, and let's just say that you are someone who recruits and hires salespeople. You
Okay.
want people to sell at a high level, and so the process goes like this: the recruiter talks to you, and they say, "Well, great, welcome to the team. You start on Monday. Great, you start on Monday. You show up on Monday. The person at the front desk is just looking down at his computer, looks up and notices you, and looks back down at his computer. You stand there until you walk up and say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm supposed to be starting today." "Oh, yes. Yeah, Mr. Smith will be here in a moment. Go ahead and take a seat." So you take a seat. You wait. Kind of feels like a doctor's office a little bit. Mr. Smith gets in, walks in with his coffee, and he's got his stuff in his hands. And of course, we're going back to pre-COVID because now we're in a physical environment. He says, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Jesse, welcome to the team. Get with Doris. She'll show you your spot, and I will meet with you at 1:00. You should have a list of things to do." Doris, without looking you in the eye, walks you to a cubicle. The cubicle has wires hanging out of it. There's no computer. It actually has trash left over from the last person that could have been fired the week before. You fumble your way through this very first day and this very first beginning experience. Then you go through sales training. Some of it's online, some of it's in person. It all feels very just very mundane, maybe below or at your level. You didn't really learn anything new. And after 30 days of that, you are now expected to go out into the field. There's nothing that tells you that you knew what you were doing. You get your training, and now you're expected to sell. Bill meets with you about hitting quota and lets you know that you need to make this many phone calls and have this many sales month 1, month 2, month 3. So this is by the way, this is being played out all across America as we speak. Fix that for me.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to fix, more than I could fix in one conversation, right?
Give me a few areas where we can operate.
Yeah, for starters, so most of my experience is in customer experience journey mapping. However, like you mentioned before, we do have internal customers, and we usually call them employees. And more, the more emphasis is being understood and placed on the employee experience. Now you'll see customer experience often stylized as CX, and I've seen lately employee experience stylized as EX. So if you're focused on your customer experience, what I like to say is you can't spell experience without the EX. Meaning, if your employees are not having a great employee experience, you cannot expect them to deliver a great experience to your customers. Similar to my interview at the video store, oh yeah, emphasis on service, all right. But then there's no training or follow-up to that. So if I were working with this organization, first step, even before we do anything that even touches the customers, let's look at how do we make a stellar employee experience so that, when I walk through that door, I know immediately. And realistically, you know what? We could even rewind. It probably starts before that even. In the interview process, what does the interview look like? What does applying look like? How are these things different from other organizations? Because let's be honest, if I'm a sales professional, just like you said, that's happening all over America. I could go into other organizations and work for them as well. And I think things have changed a little bit where it used to be that we had to prove ourselves to the organization. And I think much more now, maybe pre-COVID, the organization had to prove themselves to us. And I've seen more and more where I can think back a few years, a manager that I worked with talked about how in his interviews, because the candidate would interview with him and then a couple people on his team, and he would let the people on the team kind of ask the hard questions. For him, it was all about selling the company to the candidate. He wanted them to really want the job and feel all in on that. When I look at some of the great employee experiences, I'm a huge fan of Disney and what they do.
Yes.
That their initial training is training everyone. Everybody goes through their traditions training, so they're learning about Disney, what Disney means, what it stands for. It's not even job specific until a couple of days working for the organization. You look at Zappos, they have the offer. I forget the amount. I think it's $4,000 that they, after you go through training, they'll pay you $4,000 to
To buy you up.
quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they want to make sure that you are there because this is a great culture fit and I want to be here. It's not just about the money and the paycheck. When it comes to like another example I love is Chick-fil-A actually.
Yes.
You say, oh, thank you, whatever, my pleasure. It's not that Chick-fil-A hires all of the nicest people. They don't all say my pleasure because they're all so nice. They say my pleasure because they were trained to, because
Right.
Chick-fil-A understands what they want the experience to look like. And that starts again with the employees. So I mean, if I'm coming in to fix some things here, number one, let's make sure employees are having a stellar experience, from applying to interviewing to getting hired, onboarding, and on down the road. There's so much that could be done there. Once those employees start to have a great experience, then we can let's look at the customer journey. And in many cases, what I've found is those two can almost mirror each other. And so when you have established what you want your employee experience to look like and what are some of those thoughts and feelings and emotions that people should have, you've already kind of created a foundation for your customer experience, and that you'll find that many of those will be the same.
All right, bring me to the CX side of it, Jesse. This is good stuff, brother.
Yeah.
What like in you've seen a lot. Yeah, I think I love the and by the way, how did I not know that you had a book? I will order this as soon as we click off of here.
Oh,
Um,
great.
so you have another person, but it's a million customers served. But the idea that I guess I want to get to is like, well, I guess give me the bad, like where are we messing it up? Where is this going wrong? And remember, we're talking to salespeople. I've seen some salespeople who sell, it's like they are gone.
Sure, sure.
Not the people usually who listen here, but like it's a problem. But like, where are we missing it?
Honestly, I mean, there is bad stuff out there. There's
What's the
bad
worst you've seen?
salespeople, bad service provider in sales,
On anything,
um,
like what's
or
a horror
in
story? Yeah.
anything. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Um, I'll give you an example. This may not be the worst I've ever seen, but it's an example. And okay, many years ago, uh,
In a galaxy far,
also
far away.
in a galaxy far, far away, there was an entertainment venue. And it had like miniature golf courses. It had the arcade, the go-karts. You know what kind of place I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about. And when it was time to close at 11 o'clock, we might be in there playing games or doing whatever. We used tokens back then. Most of these places now are using some sort of like card system. But yeah, you had to buy your game tokens and then, plunk your tokens into the game and you're there playing. And 11 o'clock comes, time to close, and all of the games turn off. And people in there are like freaking out, like, oh, my game just turned off. I was about to win 1 million tickets and my game just turned off. Yeah, people obviously would get really upset about that. And someone asked, you ask the employees, what's going on? We're playing the games and all the games just turned off. And the employees are just like, yeah, sorry, it's 11, we're closing. And someone even said one time, yeah, everything's on a timer at, nothing we can do at closing time, just everything shuts down.
Nothing we can do.
Nothing we can do. Now for the rest of the story. I was the manager. I would go in the back when it was time to close and flip all those breakers to turn the games off.
And there's nothing you could do about there, was there?
To get the people out, because it's time to close. Get out of here, people. And the reason I share that is because I want the audience to know, number one, like, I'm not perfect. I didn't wake up one morning and, hey, I am the guru of customer experience. I've done terrible things to people. Even in that case, I've pissed off a lot of customers. But even I was not so far gone that I couldn't make some changes and adapt. And in that scenario, I mean, we found out it was really easy. What we would do instead is just 10 minutes before we close, we just turn off the token machines so people couldn't exchange their money for tokens. People were much cooler about that when they were just like, oh, okay, I can't get any more tokens. And then even if they kept playing past 11 o'clock or whenever we closed, eventually they run out of tokens and then everybody leaves. It's much nicer than shutting games down for people. So I don't know if it's the worst.
So you're a wet towel. That's amazing.
I was. But again, there's something to learn here. I will take 80% of the blame for that. But again, we talk about leaders and leadership. Part of it was that I was under pressure you need to close at closing time. You have to worry about getting your employees out. We're looking at labor costs. Mm-hmm. If I have somebody that buys 1,000 tokens and we close at 11 and they are there until midnight, then I have games operating. I have employees there that I'm paying. And now looking back, I'm like, I don't care. Like, just take care of those customers, make them happy. But I can understand also the pressure that I was under from the owner of the facility as the manager to kind of keep things moving. He just wants me to make him money, make that money. And so it's interesting that leadership can be a driver in some of those bad decisions that we make.
Well, and it's interesting, by the way, that you say this, and I find this to be true in life, even, Jesse, in terms of it's pressures that oftentimes, like pressures that make sense. Like, it makes sense we're a business and we want more money.
Yeah.
Right. It makes sense that, like, but it's those pressures that make sense that actually cause us to abandon really our self and just go after, okay, well, I have to do this. I should do this. I should do that. And I feel like that a lot of times that's what actually stops us from slowing down and making a connection, even in real life, right? With your family, with your kids, with your wife, with like just these different things, because of all the things that I call it your should list. Mm-hmm. Right. And I should do this. I should do that. I should. And before you know it, you're in a big pile of should. And a part of your should list was like, well, I should be closed here because now I got these, I don't want extra employee costs and extra this and extra. And so it's like, yeah, you can just like, it's easy to justify bad customer service.
Yeah, it is.
Sadly. What are the problems that you're seeing out there now? Is it just people are ignorant? Is it just they feel like it's like, oh my gosh, that would take too much time, or to rethink and redo? Like, what stops us these days from world famous customer service?
Yeah, and that's one thing I had considered earlier when you asked what's the worst thing I've seen out there. There is a lot of bad stuff, and when you get a bad experience like that, that does kind of stick out in our mind. But I mean, I don't have data on this. I'm just spitballing here. Probably
Yep.
10 to 15% of experiences are actually like really bad. The real challenge is, maybe 5% are spectacular. And the challenge is that kind of 80% in the middle, that's just average. That, it's fine. There's nothing amazing, incredible about it. One of my buddies that I used to work with, he would often say that mediocrity relentlessly attacks excellence.
Ooh,
Yeah.
say that
And
again.
mediocrity relentlessly attacks excellence. And so a lot of the challenge isn't being bad, it's just being mediocre, being average. Um, but back to, kind of what we talked about earlier on with consistency and exceeding expectations. You know, you ask anybody, what's the number one way to advertise your business? People say word of mouth. Okay, well, what are you doing to generate word of mouth? Digital marketing, or oh, I post a blog, or whatever other options people have. There's plenty of ways to market, yet people are not um, deliberately tapping into how do I create experiences. We talked about feeling, not that people will just feel, but also that they will want to talk about to other people.
Mm.
So it has to be a good experience, has to be exceed their expectations consistently. And usually if you're getting into that realm, those are the experiences that then they want to talk to about other people, which is why it's important, like I said, that while surprise and delight is great, if they are talking to other people, you want it to be something that's repeatable, so that when those other people come to do business with you, you can again repeat that same experience.
Okay. And so that's going to bring me to my final question. You're going to operate on
Sure.
me. So I'm getting
Oh,
free
okay.
consulting here from Jesse Be Good. So I have, I just, because I believe that sales and business is really, it's relationship building.
Hmm.
And that really it's about matching up with the right person. And if I'm the right person, you're the right person, then we should, these things should make sense. In the process of that, I show appreciation to people along the way, whether it's sending them books or sending them gifts or sending them something that really means something at that exact moment. And some of those things have become very standardized.
Hmm.
So there's a few things that I'll send to people along my process. Other things are not, and the things that are not, that are very personalized, take a lot of my or take my personal time,
Hmm.
and oftentimes I find that the busier I get, that those things get delayed. And so what I've been attempting to do is actually to write out everything and record it on a document, so that now I can outsource this to someone else, so that it's from my heart.
Sure.
It feels personal. It's not as like, I'm still putting some personal things in there,
Hmm.
but I found that I wanted to, relationships and being seen as valuable was so important to me that it was hard for me to let that stuff go.
Sure.
I'm the only one that can show this person like that they matter and that they're important and that this thing is important. And so I use GIFs. I use text messages and GIFs. Like actual like the animated GIF messages.
Oh,
I
right.
use books. I want to have a multi-dimensional experience with the people. So I coach people like on Zoom, like we are right now,
Hmm.
but I want to impact them beyond that. And what I'm finding is that a lot of those things I've actually held on myself. And so even though it's great and it's touchy feely and it makes people feel warm and excited, the process of it and the repeatable part of it
Mm-hmm.
is not something that I've been good at. And so therefore it actually limits the amount of people that I can work with. So how is
Sure.
someone like me, like, give me some ideas. How do I create a process that I can give over to someone else and still feel like that? Because a part of it selfishly, it's about me, right? Feeling good that I'm giving something general. Like actually, this is a slant of my business for the whole year. How can I create a business of generosity?
Sure.
So talk to me.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that you can make things personal without personalizing. Uh, Personalized to me means that it's maybe it means like going onto Facebook, looking at pictures, finding out what some of my interests are, and then you refer to that, which is fine. If you want to do that, that's great. But I recognize that that can be a challenge in making it scalable. If you were to, you could probably quickly find where I live and find a local baker near my home and have cookies delivered to my house. That's something that's personal to me. It's would deliver it, start to create an emotional connection. But the trick is once you have that, so you know where I based on where I live, you have this contact. Now you have an established relationship there as well. And so if you make other contacts in my area, then it's you have one thing that you can go to kind of multiply that process. Um,
And so would it
and
be
I,
like coming up with like a list of things that might come at appropriate times and then making sure it goes on someone else's calendar to order it for that person? Is
Yeah,
that the
yeah, for sure. If you have like a VA, a virtual assistant that can do those things, I know that you and I, in one of our previous conversations, you had talked about that you want to do handwritten cards, but that takes
Mhm.
time to handwrite things. But I know that there is a third-party service. I believe it's called Handwritten with a
Mhm.
Y instead of an I, and you can go in and you can type in what you want to say and you can send that to multiple people at scale. um, but it's like a machine that hand writes your card so that as it arrives it looks personal because it's addressed to them. It's handwritten, but you can also scale it with the use of technology.
Okay, so there are lots of fun ways to do these things, and like to me, this is Jesse. This is it's just a place where people can stand out. This is where
Yeah,
you
for sure.
if you're willing to stand out, if you're willing to make a little bit of effort, people will fall in love with you. And when people are in love with you, I mean, look at the videos of what Beatles fans would do for them. Like that's what I want to do. Like for me and the people I work with, and I would love that I was able to help others right now to be able to experience that with what I call champion clients, to be able
Hmm.
to bear their name, to carry their torch to these new places. And I think that's what this kind of customer service can bring. I'm gonna let you split out of here, man, with any final thoughts. And man, if there's any place where I definitely connect with Jesse B, the letter B, good, just like it sounds, Good. Connect with him on LinkedIn. He puts out some phenomenal stuff there. But Jesse, how can we get more of you and all that stuff? So any parting thoughts, and then tell us how to put our hooks into you.
Yeah, connecting with me on LinkedIn is great. I'm happy to connect, happy to call, have a conversation, say, "Hey, I know Donnie," and we'll get on on the phone and talk. Especially, you know, if you are recognizing I have some of these issues or challenges that Donnie talked about, you know, let's just get on the phone and chat and see. You know, like I said, I'm always happy to help and do however I can, whether that's just offering tips or getting more, taking more of a deep dive, doing any kind of specific training or things like that. What I would leave you with is my mantra. When I wrote my book, Happy to Help, it only has 6 chapters. There's an intro and a conclusion. The 3 main chapters are the 3 steps that I live by, which are that you discover the needs of your customer, you deliver as best as you can, and whenever possible, you do more to exceed their expectations. So you discover, deliver, do more. And you can use that in customer experience. You can use that in service recovery. You can use that when you're trying to sell to customers. But that has always worked well for me.
Love it. I love the 3D approach to customer service. Guys, this matters to you. It matters to you more now than ever. Get with Jesse. look at what is this about mapping out client experiences, customer experiences, and you need this in your life. I promise you, it's changed my business, and I hope that it can change yours. And listen, if you can lead from anywhere, you can lead from everywhere. If you can sell from anywhere, you can sell from everywhere. Your talent should not be limited to your zip code. Jesse, thanks for empowering us today, brother.
Thanks a lot, Donnie. We'll talk to you later on.